Imagine you're eating in a 5-star restaurant with shiny lights and great ambience, but you don't know what is going behind the walls. That means what is going in the kitchen and most probably what is going in your stomach. Because in a recent raid in a Bengaluru 5-star hotel, what has been found is not just shocking, it is an indicator of a clear pattern that exists and shows that we are looking at a food safety crisis in our country. Because when we see this incident, it is not an isolated one. There are multiple that are seen every day across newspapers, social media outlets and multiple places. But the question here is, if 5-star restaurants, 5-star hotels are not even giving us basic food safety, then where is our food safety enforcement framework, the big law, the big legislation that we have, and also the agencies, what are they doing about it? Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and in today's session we are going to understand that when we see such scenarios that rotten vegetables, expired products, stale milk is present in 5-star restaurant and the quantity is absolutely questionable, making sure that it is reaching the tables of multiple consumers, then we need to understand that what exactly is the extent of this crisis. How big is this crisis? And then we also need to explore that who is the one who should be responsible for containing it, and when we are looking at food safety standards, why India lacks so badly. Because whenever we talk about food safety, food standards, food quality, we have a clear notion that abroad it is better. But why is it better, how it is better, and where is it better? So let us begin with understanding that what exactly has happened. So as of now, what we are seeing that Karnataka's food safety department, they basically went for an inspection and they inspected multiple 3-star and 5-star hotels. Now amidst this, multiple inspection teams were deployed and 35 food samples were collected for laboratory testing. What was shown is shocking, but unfortunately this is not the only time such things have been seen. For example, expired milk and food products, rotten meat products, when we are looking at kitchen conditions, absolutely unhygienic, fungal growth on vegetables and FSSAI labeling violations, misbranded products and so much more. So when we are looking at this situation, as I said, this is just tip of the iceberg. There lies a lot inside and that we need to understand what is that lot. That how deep is this whole food safety rotten to an extent, that needs to be understood. So when we are trying to understand, we have to understand the whole cycle first. When we are looking at food safety, it is not about just what food has been served on your table. It is also about from farm to table what processes it has been going through. So when we are looking at the food, it is starting from the farm, then it is processed, it is also stored, transported, and then it comes to the restaurant and it is served to you. If not this condition, after transportation, it would be an outlet from where you will be purchasing the food, right? This is the whole cycle. And when we are looking at food safety that needs to be maintained, it needs to be maintained across this cycle, and similarly the failures are occurring across this cycle. So when we are trying to understand the depth of how bad the food safety failure has gone, the extent is this much. Now why I am saying the extent is this much? Because when we are looking at every stage, let us begin with the first stage, farm. We are talking about agriculture. We have problems such as pesticides. We have problems such as contaminated water. We have veterinary drug issues which are present. Now let us talk about processing. In part of processing, we have big issues, something that we very commonly are aware about, but unfortunately not much we can do, adulteration. We also have at this very stage where contamination occurs, unsafe additives are added, and then when we are looking at storage, where we have already seen at the previous cycles food being contaminated, we have broken cold storage, poor temperature monitoring, regulation, expired products sitting in the storage. And once such products reach restaurant where they should be probably thrown out or outlets where they should not be accepted. They are not only just kept, they are kept in poor hygiene. There is a possibility of cross contamination that does take place, and further improper storage. So what we see is that we are looking at food safety failure across this cycle, and that is how deep or how bad food safety framework of India is standing now. Now you might be thinking that this is about rotten vegetables or it is about the restaurants. No, it's not. It is about that what we have in form of law and how it needs to be implemented, and how there is a wide gap. They are as farther as away could be possible. So in this context, once we have established that how deep the problem is, the first question that should come to your mind, that who has created this problem or who can actually solve this problem. But when we are looking at this problem, the bigger thing here is that we have at least understood a clear pattern, that this is a bigger systemic problem, where it is not just that the cycle has gone bad, the cycle is not being surveyed at all, surveillance is weak, testing capacity is immensely bad, and then we have uneven enforcement. And that is why we are seeing that probability of detection is absolutely non-existent. Now the question is, who will ensure all of this? How this needs to be done in our country? Because if we do not explain that, then we will not be able to understand this statement itself. So in that context, let's first understand what is the whole framework in front of us. And when we are looking at the framework, India has a very solid legislation, very solid framework. When we are looking at the law, we have Food Safety and Standards Act of 2006. This act was responsible for creation of FSSAI, and it consolidated all the food laws present in our country. Now, it is such a huge legislation that what we see that this legislation and this organization, Food Safety Standards Authority of India, we have to see that their objective is across the spectrum of food that travels: manufacturing, storage, distribution, sale, import. And this is where the safety and the standards of food are checked under this legislation. But you might have questioned that, is FSSAI responsible for all of this? No, it has been structured in a very clear guided manner. How this is implemented is furthermore detailed. When we are looking at the master organization, that is FSSAI, it is the one which is responsible for setting the standards, setting the framework, setting the recommendations, setting rules, regulation, and that is not random, it is science based. Now once that is done, it has created the whole system, it has set the rules, regulation. Now the main work of FSSAI is to coordinate the national system. Now how will they coordinate the system? They have to create the system. Now the system has been created through state food safety departments. They are the ones who will be responsible for implementing this. Now state departments have their own food safety officers. Can you tell me one name of food safety officer who has been in news for doing commendable work for food safety initially in Maharashtra and then in other states as well? So when we are looking at food safety officers, they are responsible for inspecting the premises. Then once they have inspected, they collect the samples, and based on that, it is submitted to the food laboratories. It is with the safety officers that surveillance is also conducted by them only. Now once the food sample or whatever sample has been collected, once the food samples has gone to the laboratory, it is tested, and based on the testing, the final penalty or prosecution is done by a proper adjudicating authority or the court. Now the adjudication or prosecution is not in this framework. Now if you clearly see, the framework or the system that has been set up seems very much in place and tight. But at the same time, multiple problems are occurring. So the question is, if this is such a great framework, why are the problems happening? Now let us go back again to the statement that we talked about initially, that how when we are talking about surveillance, which is with food safety officers, that is weak because of manpower, limited technology, limited resources. Second, when we are looking at the testing capacity, they have to send the samples where? to the laboratories. The laboratories are limited, the tools, resources again limited. And this is also when we see patchy work, uneven. It happens sometimes, it does not. So that means the final enforcement is also not coming along. And because of all these, let's just say if you are opening a restaurant, you think that there is a low probability that any day you will be inspected. You are chill, you don't feel like following the rules. Then you think even if you are tested, the testing capacity is so limited that your food sample might not even reach there, might not be even tested. And third, even if it comes to that what will happen, what will be the punishment, what is the extreme situation. And that is why you assume that there is extremely low probability of detection, and that is why you are okay with selling or keeping rotten food items. And that is why regulation is there to keep deterrence. That means laws are there, so I shouldn't be wanting to do all of this. But because the regulation is so weak, it has no deterrence effect at all. Now when we are looking at this, you might be tempted to put it all on FSSAI. But if we have understood the whole system that I just explained to you, that FSSAI is not the only implementation agency, we have a full implementation system. And it is not just the responsibility of FSSAI that should be taken up, it should be the responsibility of all the involved stakeholders. So when we are looking at food safety, it is not a center or a state issue, it is center-state combined implementation that is very much required. And that is why we need to understand at this point of time that what are the biggest thing taking away the main role or the ground implementation of that has been put in place. So in that context, we have to understand that when we are looking at food safety failure almost every day in one form or the another in newspaper, on social media, first factor we have already highlighted, that the surveillance remains weak. But the question here is why? Is it just the limitation of resources? No. We also have to understand that when we are looking at food sector of our country, it is enormous and at the same time highly fragmented. And because of that, what we see? Millions of restaurants, millions of dhabas, millions of vendors, food processors, cloud kitchens, retailers and more. So when we are talking about the number millions, how it is supposed to be handled by a few thousands? That is a big question. And these millions cannot be monitored through random limited raids. So this is obviously a clear structural weakness right in front of us. Second, when we are looking at inspection, even if let's just say amongst the millions few are spotted by thousands of food safety officers, that is when the food is already almost on the table. The food is served. It is reactive. Even if in that scenario, the main question needs to be asked that what can be done so that it is not repeated again at all. We don't do that. Inspections are done, testing is done, prosecution is done. No correction, course correction is very limited. Then I have already highlighted that how laboratory capacity in our country is extremely limited, and club it with corruption that is wide and famous in our country. Apart from that, a big structural problem is the non-uniformity, because when we are looking at enforcement, it is variable across states. It is dependent on the department, the officers present there. For example, if you look at Telangana, in recent times they are doing amazing work on food safety through the initiative HFAST. Now this is specifically for Hyderabad, the food safety department, the food safety officers and multiple food safety influencers are also contributing to it. And once we are looking at this, the regulation or the punishment that comes with it, that should create deterrence, that is also not present there, because penalties do not matter, because detection is almost unlikely. There is no possibility that you will be detected amongst the millions that we discussed. Furthermore, when we are trying to understand the whole context of penalty, let us look at this. Expected cost of violation, what is it? We have to look into the probability of detection, which is extremely low, probability of enforcement, which is also low, and then it is multiplied into penalty. So even if the penalty, let's just say, is in lakhs, this is the most lowest lakh that I can take here. This is 0, this is 0, so penalty will never come into the picture itself. And that is what keeps this food safety crisis becoming bigger, becoming dangerous, and almost a threat to our lives, especially in India. Why I am specifically saying especially in India? Because when you are talking about the conception or the norm that food safety standards are better abroad, that is not altogether wrong. Even when we are looking for the exports from our country to abroad, they are tested by the same agency. But because they will not be accepted abroad, they are done right. When we are looking at multiple food companies which export especially to US or European countries, they have different facilities for manufacturing which is to be exported and different facilities for India. Because again, food safety is a whole lot of joke that we can see in our country. And when we want to understand this joke, we also have to understand that how this framework is different. And in this context, let us look at traditional enforcement, which is pretty much present in our country. Food is tested, violation is present, okay, action will be taken, done. Again, when we are looking at millions, we can only spot a few thousand. But when we are looking at preventive regulation, that means we know the hazard exists, let us assess the risk that is present there, control the process, change the process, and then maintain records to verify it. For example, if we know that there is a possibility of rotten vegetables reaching the restaurants, we have identified the hazard, we assess the risk, that how much is the possibility that it does go rotten, it does reach the restaurant, and then we control the process. For example, storage will be better, cold storage will be enabled, proper timelines will be given, and then proper records are maintained to ensure the control of the process. Not just records are maintained, when we are talking about inspection, there is verification, there is traceability, and there is recall. When we are looking at the US Food Safety Modernization Act, it clearly places much more emphasis on preventive controls and supply chain verification rather than just endpoint verification. Raiding the restaurants is not enough. We have to ensure that the whole supply chain is checked. But again, as I pointed out, there are multiple structural weaknesses. Structural weaknesses including lack in terms of infrastructure, lack in terms of manpower, and then definitely the surveillance and everything does come across. But at the same time, don't let this give you an impression that India has weaker laws. India has extensive food regulations covering product standards, contaminants, toxins, packaging, labeling, organic food, fortification, and whatnot. Apart from that, when we are looking at FSSAI, it not randomly monitors the state. It ensures that there is a proper state's food safety index that is maintained, based on which rankings are done. So here the framework is not the problem. We don't need altogether a new law. We need better implementation, better regulation, and also rework on the approach of this whole framework that is lying in front of us. So in coming time, our way forward should be to ensure that the risk-based inspections are also taken into account. We are targeting the whole chain that exists rather than just random inspections which are nothing but reactive. We have to strengthen the laboratories, not just in terms of quantity but also in terms of quality. And when we are talking about ensuring this whole supply chain verification, the traceability needs to be end-to-end. This is going to be a huge challenge for an enormous as well as highly fragmented food sector, but such steps are much needed, otherwise we are too deep into adulterated, ununderstood, unverified food deep in our stomachs. Apart from that, when we are looking at violations, when I showed you the multiple slides in the start itself, there were not just something new. I have told you multiple times that there are restaurants which have repeated the violations multiple times. The violation repetition should be extremely costly. There should be closures, suspensions and more. Because if you look at the FSSAI data, more than 22,000 facilities were checked in the duration of 24-25. Out of which 50% were non-conforming. Non-conforming means that they were not up to the mark, and in that context, this is a too big number to gamble. Apart from that, when we are looking at transparency, that can be ensured through a proper public food safety dashboard, where public also knows where the food is coming from, where it is going to, which are the people, restaurants, places to pick and whatnot. Because when we are looking at today, when people are ready to pay, they have the demand, they need to be served, right? Otherwise, we are being wronged in this. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section. I'll be leaving you here with the prelims practice question. Let me know the answer to this very basic direct question, and I am giving you also a line that you can use, because when we are looking at food safety, you just don't have to understand it as public health issue. It is a huge governance, federalism and regulatory issue as well. So if we want that, we have to correct all of this. Now that was all. Thank you so much.